Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gaming Daddy channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So we have a video that was requested by one of my audience members. He pretty much said, why don't make a video about mods, because this is something a lot of agents, miss. And I've been making a few videos lately on, some things for new agents and returning agents. And I thought this would be one of them that I feel will be critical enough to serve that, incoming player base that's coming back into the game, or people who are just buying the game. Now, these are your gear system mods. What these do is they actually augment your build and make your player stronger. So we're going to go through the different ones. We're going to look at scenarios where you can use them. And I'm going to encourage you to go ahead and do your testing and do your experimentation, because that is actually a part of the Division's gameplay loop. I understand it's easy to go to a video and look for how these builds work with these different mods. But what I would say is you start piecing builds together, start piecing items together, and eventually start learning how to figure out, how they work. If you want to know what brand sets means, what gear means, and you're a little confused about that, I made a video on that subject matter, so you can check it out on my prior released videos and you'll see it there. I'll probably put a link here for you guys as well in post-production if I remember. Now, offensive mods, they will give you offensive stats of the critical hit nature or the headshot nature. So pay attention to them. There's some that give critical hit chance. Critical hit chance is pretty much a percentage modifier that allows for you to be able to deal much more lethal damage, and that damage is called critical hit damage. There are also mods that grant you more critical hit damage, which increases the amount of damage that you deal when you land a critical hit. There are videos explaining this stuff, but if you didn't get it, just ask in the comment section. I'll be happy to maybe leave an answer for you. People around here, can help with that as well. And then you also have some mods that grant you extra headshot damage. So what these would do is when you slot them in your gear, it would then grant you that buff extra on your, on your weapons or whatever it is that mod is affecting. So this is how mods will usually work. On the case of the defensive mods, there are many of them. They're there to protect you from different kinds of, I would say, in quote, exotic damage. We don't use the word exotic damage anymore in the Division 2, but from the prior game, any damage that wasn't necessarily bullet damage, we called it exotic damage. In fact, the developers called it exotic damage. So burn damage, bleed damage, shock damage, poison, or whatever it is, those are damage values that are kind of out of the nature of, say, what a shooter, or in the traditional sense would provide. But because of the RPG nature, you have these things in the game. So these mods provide different kinds of resistances. I'm going to make that word up, resistances, including protection from elites. So enemy NPCs that are of the yellow type, they will deal a reduced damage to you if you actually proc or use these mods in your gear. Now, how do you, let's look at the utility. They have the repair skills, the skill haste mods, and also the skill duration mods as well. I don't know if they have any others, but hey, that's not necessarily the point of this. The point is how you use them, why you use them, and what context they should be used in. Now, one thing about the gear mods is they will fit in masks of almost, if not every kind. So your exotic masks, you'll have a mod slot on them. Your gear sets mask, you have an empty mod slot where you can put in whichever mod you want, and also your brand sets. So pretty much you can slot in any of those mods into these particular items. All you have to do is pretty much just go to the mod option, and you see where you can actually put a mod. You can also do that for the chess pieces of any kind as well. Chess pieces of the gear set nature, the exotic nature, and also the brand set nature. You're going to see that there's an empty mod slot, and you can add or slot in whichever mod you want. For those of you who left the game, depending on when you left, the mod slots were specific in past versions and patches of the game. You could only slot in specific mods into specific slots in specific gear. It made the gear game very complicated. So what they did is they went ahead and simplified it, so any mod can just slot into whichever mod slot that's available. And in the backpacks are the other place where you can slot them based on the gear, or if it's exotic, or if it's a brand set. So this is something that is kind of general, and I would say common with the three items I've shown you: the backpack, the mask, and the chest piece. Now, there are exceptions to this rule. You'll notice that on my gloves here of the gear set nature, I do not have a mod slot there. If you also notice on the brand set, I do not have a mod slot there as well. And this is a design decision that the developers have made. And even on the exotic, the exotic glove that's in the game, there is no mod slot. But believe it or not, there are gloves that do take mods in this game. These are the improvised pieces. You can get the blueprints of them from, I think, some specific activities. I don't know if it's control points or whatever. And if you notice, the improvised glove looks just, yellow like other gloves, but you'll notice that there's a difference in the sense that it has no emblem. So compared to other brand items, which have an emblem and have a name and have their 3 bonuses, if you don 3 items of that class, you're going to notice the improvised gloves does not have anything. Give you an example here. Compare, say, with this Sokolov Concern, gloves, right? Let's just do this. Let's just compare the improvised version with, say, this Sokolov Concern gloves. You're going to notice that there's a big difference. Sokolov Concern has 3 pieces that show you the different stats. The improvised gloves has nothing, but it does have a mod slot, and the mod slot is where I can go ahead and put in one of these gear system mods in order for me to be able to gain or leverage a specific stat for my build. This gets a little complicated, and this is why I encourage you to come in here and do some experimentation yourself. You have to tinker with the game in order for you to be able to figure out some of the more complex aspects of it. Now, for these particular improvised pieces, if you were wondering how you can get them, I think from doing control points or even looking at the requirements, that's how you can get the blueprints for them, and you can craft them. If you notice, I'm crafting, let me go ahead and craft, say, a holster, an improvised holster, which is actually pretty cool, honestly. So I'm going to craft an improvised holster, boom. And just like that, I have an item here that's already a holster that does have a mod slot by itself. And if you notice, compared to other holsters, it's not going to have an emblem, nor is it going to have a description. So what people do with these kinds of pieces is that they use it to stack some stats to higher percentages that they will probably not be able to stack if they were using brand sets, because brand sets on the holster, the knee pads, and the glove aspect, they prohibit you from using these gear mods. So this is how mods are used in the Division 2, and I would say you can never overstate their use. For the longest time, I used to be very guilty of forgetting to put my mods in or saving my loadouts when I change my mods so that when I actually swap back to them, I'm not missing mods in my gear. Because if you look at the percentage stats of these particular items, they do help your build. They do help your agent, to be able to be more effective on the battlefield. I'll give you an example here. So this is one of my favorite builds in the game. It's a status effect build. And the mods that I run are armor and kill mods because I'm really, really, really squishy. Like if any enemy NPC hits me, I'm done. But one thing that this particular build does very well is that it shreds and melts enemies like crazy. So all I need for this particular build when I'm running is sometimes I'll put a little bit of armor on kill so that I can kind of get my armor to regenerate. If, say, I'm in a position where my armor is low, it's not difficult to kill bad guys at all. In fact, I can nuke them in a very small, with very minimal effort. And so all I have to do is pretty much just make sure that I take them down. But to be honest, that is not necessarily the best way to play using something like this. If you were to ask me, the best way would be skill haste. And I'll tell you exactly why. I need skill haste, meaning my skills need to cool down very, very fast. So skill haste is a utility mod attribute that allows for your own gear to cool down, basically replenish after you use it. Because every time you use a skill, sorry, did I say your own gear? I meant your skill. Every time you use a skill, that skill has a cooldown, and using skill haste cools that skill down and resets it much faster. Even though the percentages don't seem like a big deal, the moment they start stacking up, then it starts to make sense as well that, oh, you're going to pretty much benefit from this. So that's one way to be able to use these mods. So I encourage you, go out there, put your builds together, pair up your brand sets, your gear sets, or, coordinate them in a way that actually utilizes all of their stats, and then continue to test out to see what is actually beneficial for your agent. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. Hopefully we'll be able to get to them and get you guys up to speed. Thank you so much for your time and audience. I appreciate you guys a lot. Hopefully we'll talk in another one. Peace out.